The fact that they're sitting there trying to plan a cover-up, I mean, it's incredibly disappointing.
First tonight, a new story that you'll only see on 8. The victim in a crash cover-up meant to protect a drunk Kent County prosecutor is talking for the first time about the violent wreck, the deception, and how police may have lied again.
And we broke this about GRPD today. Another officer off the job over a claim he held a gun to a handcuffed man's head. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm Susan Shaw.
And I'm Brian Sterling. We start the 6 with our exclusive interview tonight with this man, Daniel Empson. He was the person trying to get into his parked car in Grand Rapids when it was hit by Kent County Assistant Prosecutor Josh Kuiper.
The crash sent Empson flying down the street. It put him in the hospital. What followed in the minutes and months afterward, a police cover-up to protect Kuiper that slowly unraveled. It all started when Target 8 began questioning details of the crash last year. Then, last week, we received the phone recordings between the investigating officer, Adam Ickes, and his superiors, Officer Tom Warwick and ex-Lieutenant Matt Janiski. Proof that the trio worked to get their story straight and save the prosecutor from a drunk driving charge. 24-hour News 8's Lindsay McComo helped break the original story. She's here today with that exclusive interview and a breaking development on the case now, Lindsay.
Yes, and Brian, I do want to get straight to that new accusation from Johnson Law. After listening to those recordings with their client, and based on what they heard in those recordings, they say Officer Adam Ickes lied in his deposition they took back in May in relation to their lawsuit. Now, we also asked their client, Dan Empson, about hearing officers talking about him that night.
I would have rather not had it happen, but in the end, I'm hoping some positive stuff can come out of it.
For the first time, we sat down with the victim at the center of controversy that's consumed Grand Rapids Police and his attorneys at Johnson Law. How do you feel or give reaction to hearing them discussing while he was actually on the wrong side of the road?
Yes, okay, I was parked illegally. I will be glad to pay the $50 parking ticket if that's what comes out of it. But the fact that they're sitting there trying to plan a cover-up, I mean, it's incredibly disappointing to have people that you expect to be doing what is in a victim's best interest, that is, doing what the law says they're supposed to do, sitting back and saying, how can we get out of this? And then joke about it afterwards. I mean,
Dan Empson and his attorneys, Ben Johnson and Brian Moldy, listened to those secret but now released recordings. Moldy says Officer Adam Ickes lied under oath during a deposition for one of their lawsuits. According to the deposition documents, Ickes told Moldy Kuiper, quote, didn't have any overt signs of heavy intoxication, but he stated he had been drinking. There was a crash. Moldy goes on to ask why he would use the term hammered then when he first called in the crash, to which Ickes said he didn't know.
And he said flat out to me, no, that's not a term that I would usually use, but no. And if I was describing someone as intoxicated, I would say visibly intox. So we wait for 4 months to get these telephone calls, and lo and behold, he does describe him exactly that way. Now, his initial denial, to me, that's a lie.
The attorneys say those recordings show the men tried to minimize Empson's injuries even before he was looked at by a doctor.
Did he tell you that that guy went to the hospital?
He said he was getting checked out.
He was like laughing and joking around, but they boarded him and transported him.
I do recall maybe cracking a joke or two while I was lying down as a way to almost cope with the fact that I had just literally bounced like a stone 60 feet down the road. But I was definitely lying down the entire time I had interactions with anyone. Okay. So he could say I was laughing, but I also wasn't standing.
Empson's dad and stepfather both worked for the Department of Corrections for decades. He says he respects law enforcement, but any abuse of power needs to be handled.
We should be doing things from a moral standard that benefits everyone, not just the people we know. That shouldn't ever matter when you're talking about the application of a law and justice. And even then, the law shouldn't ever have to factor into it if people just behaved the right way anyways. You wouldn't have to worry about any of that stuff.
Now, we did just get these new accusations and the deposition documents this afternoon, so we are still working to get comment from Officer Ickes or a union rep. And one other thing I do want to mention, Ben Johnson, the other attorney, very emphatic about feeling that all 3 men involved should have been fired. 2 men are still working for the department. He said that because of that, and after hearing these recordings,
In addition, obviously, to seeing all of the body cam from that night, he's going to be writing letters to both the mayor and Chief Rahinsky after hearing the calls in their entirety, and eventually, potentially, in his hope to reopen their internal investigation.
And those lawsuits, in the meantime, they proceed.
Yes, exactly. There's still one against Kuiper directly, as well as the 3 bars that served Kuiper that night. Johnson Law alleging that the 3 bars overserved him and should be held accountable.
All right. We'll continue to follow this.
Yes, we will.
Lindsay McComal, thank you.
Thanks, Lindsay.
Let's get